Luis Antonio Tagle shocks. Everyone with devastating discovery and huge announcement. The silence was broken, and when it broke, it shook the walls of the Vatican. In a world already trembling under the weight of spiritual confusion and moral collapse, one voice, calm yet unwavering, rose above the storm. That voice was Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle. But no one expected what came next. Under the gilded domes of Rome, amid the echoing footsteps of cardinals and the whispered prayers of millions, a devastating discovery was made. One that would pierce the heart of the Church itself. And it was Cardinal Tagle who stood at the center, bearing a message that could not wait any longer. The faithful gathered, desperate for answers. The corridors of the Vatican were alive with speculation. What had been found? What hidden truth had been uncovered? And why now? For behind this shocking revelation lies a storm of spiritual warfare, political intrigue, and divine timing that few dare to speak aloud. It began quietly. First came the murmurs, secret documents reviewed in the dim candlelit rooms of the Apostolic Palace. Eyes scanning lines of ancient prophecies, warnings long buried beneath layers of secrecy. But then came the confirmation. Evidence that something long concealed had resurfaced. A crisis no longer hypothetical, but real, immediate, explosive. And so, with the eyes of the world fixed upon him, Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle stepped forward, no longer able to remain silent. In a trembling voice charged with both authority and grief, he delivered the announcement that would send shockwaves through every corner of the Catholic world. The discovery struck at the core of unresolved controversies, tested the unity of the Curia, and threatened to upend the delicate balance of power that has held for generations. What Cardinal Tagle revealed was not merely a political statement, it was a spiritual reckoning, a divine crossroads. And behind his words, many sensed the unseen hand of providence guiding him, as though heaven itself had opened a scroll and called him to read aloud its contents. Only days earlier, Pope Leo XIV had elevated him to the rank of Cardinal-Bishop of Albano, a rare and ancient title carrying immense spiritual weight. Many wondered if this promotion was more than ceremonial, if it was in fact a divine positioning for what was about to unfold. The timing was too precise, the alignment too perfect. For as the appointment came, so did the storm. The announcement shook not only the walls of the Vatican, but reached into every parish, every home, every soul who calls upon the name of Christ. What was revealed forced the Church to confront wounds it has long tried to heal, but never fully faced. But behind this devastating discovery lay something even more dangerous, the deepening of an already fragile spiritual war that has been building, quietly behind the scenes, unseen by the faithful, but fully visible to those called to shepherd God's people in these perilous days. The critics, of course, were swift. Already whispers spread, questioning Cardinal Tagle's leadership. Accusations surfaced, not of personal guilt, but of failures to bring decisive reforms during past crises. Groups long critical of the Vatican's handling of unspeakable sins once again raised their voices. But this time, the stakes were higher, because now, fresh revelations were tied not only to past scandals, but to present-day spiritual decisions that would affect the very future of the Church itself. Yet through the fire, Cardinal Tagle stood, not with defiance, not with politics, but with a weight upon his shoulders that only those truly called by God can bear. His words, filled with grief, but also with unshakable conviction, declared that this is a moment of reckoning not for one man, but for the body of Christ itself. The appointment to oversee evangelization, reaffirmed by Pope Leo XIV, now takes on new urgency. For in the midst of the Church's mission to carry light into the darkness, a darkness has been exposed from within, and this darkness demands repentance, cleansing, and divine intervention unlike any seen in recent history. The faithful hold their breath. The cardinals watch in stunned silence. And somewhere beyond the physical realm, the heavens themselves stand as witnesses. What Cardinal Tagle has unveiled is not simply a scandal. It is not simply a reform. It is a divine unveiling of that which heaven has long warned, that everything hidden will be brought to light. And now, the light is breaking through. But even as the world absorbs the gravity of this devastating discovery, a greater question emerges. Was this only the beginning? Underneath the marble halls of the Vatican, whispers turn to silence as eyes dart nervously behind crimson curtains. The weight of what Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle has just unleashed presses upon the hearts of even the most seasoned prelates. For what began as an announcement has now morphed into something far greater. A confrontation with forces unseen, a test of faith on a scale few have dared to imagine. The Holy See, a symbol of divine order and ancient tradition, trembles beneath the pressure of this unveiling. And yet it was always written that in the final days, that which was hidden would cry out for exposure. And now it has. The appointment of Tagle as Cardinal-Bishop of Albano was never just about hierarchy. No, it was strategic. It was prophetic. It was the alignment of spiritual offices for a mission that only heaven fully comprehends. For while many saw his rise as a mark of favor, the spiritually discerning knew it signaled the unfolding of deeper plans. Plans whispered about in secret conclaves, referenced in obscure prophecies. Feared by those who knew the hour was approaching, Luis Antonio Tagle, the man once known for his gentleness and humility, now stands as a vessel for a message that carries the weight of eternity. His tears, witnessed by those closest to him behind closed doors, were not of weakness, but of burden. For to carry the revelation of what he discovered is to carry a sword that divides. A truth so sharp, it slices through the most fortified defenses of institutional power. As his voice echoed through the sacred halls, even the statues of saints seemed to lean forward, as if listening with grave attention. The secret he disclosed was tied to decades of hidden files, undisclosed reports, and confidential testimonies. What was long suspected by few has now been confirmed by one appointed for such a time as this. And yet, the true horror was not simply the content of what he discovered, but how deep it reached, how many layers of silence it pierced, and how, far back, it extended into the lifeblood of the Church's governance. This was not merely a revelation of past abuses, though those are horrifying enough. This was a revelation of an internal rot that has crept alongside the holy for generations, disguising itself in piety, hiding behind robes of authority, while slowly suffocating the very heart of the bride of Christ. The forces now agitated are not only earthly. Spiritual warfare rages behind these revelations. The demonic realms tremble as the light of truth bursts forth. For as Scripture has declared, "For nothing is secret that shall not be made manifest, neither anything hid that shall not be known and come abroad." But even as Cardinal Tagle speaks, forces opposed to him mobilize in the shadows. There are those within the College of Cardinals who see this unveiling not as a cleansing, but as a threat to their positions, their ambitions, their carefully guarded networks of influence. Already, secret meetings are being held. Already, alliances are being formed, not to confront sin, but to protect power. And in the midst of it all, Pope Leo XIV watches. His decision to elevate Tagle was not made in ignorance. Some say it was divine inspiration. Others whisper that it was strategic genius. For while the world speculates about the Pope's true intentions, heaven sees the alignment. A moment of judgment beginning at the house of God. The appointment to the dicastery for evangelization now bears a weight no man can carry alone. For how can one lead the world to Christ when the very institution itself is bleeding internally? The cries of the innocent, long buried under bureaucracy and political delay, now rise before the throne of God. And justice, long delayed, demands its hour. Even as the world watches with breathless curiosity, few understand the full spiritual magnitude of this hour. This is not just a Vatican headline. This is the shaking of powers, the exposing of principalities, the opening act of a cleansing that will either purify the Church or break it apart. Pilgrims flood St. Peter's Square, some in tears, others in anger, still others in silent, prayerful expectation. News outlets speculate endlessly, but none can fully capture the heavenly tension gripping Rome. The words of the third secret of Fatima echo faintly in the hearts of the faithful. The Church will undergo great trial. The smoke of Satan has entered. And now, many wonder, has this moment finally arrived? As Cardinal Tagle stands before the cameras, the weight of centuries rests upon his shoulders. Every word he speaks now carries the risk of exile or the reward of divine approval. And yet, in his eyes, there is no fear. There is only the quiet resolve of one who has seen what others dare not see. The Vatican's ancient bells toll. Midnight masses swell with chants for mercy. Somewhere in cloistered monasteries and silent convents, nuns and monks intercede with tear-soaked prayers. For they know, this is no ordinary announcement. This is no fleeting controversy. This is the beginning of the shaking foretold. And as Tagle's voice fades into the night air, one question remains unanswered. Is this the first trumpet, or merely the warning before it? As the morning sun rises over the ancient skyline of Rome, casting its golden light upon the great dome of St. Peter's Basilica, the city awakens not with its usual quiet reverence, but with a tension so thick it seems to choke the very air itself. The faithful gather once more, their faces filled with uncertainty, with awe, with dread. For what had been spoken the night before by Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle has not faded. It lingers, like a storm cloud refusing to pass, heavy with the weight of what has been exposed. In every corner of the Vatican, doors are closed, blinds are drawn, voices are hushed. The old guard meets behind secured chambers, their faces pale, their hands trembling as they weigh the implications of what has now been forced into the light. Documents once locked away in guarded archives have surfaced, sealed, files containing testimonies, secret transactions, unspoken agreements that spanned decades, even centuries. The rot ran deeper than anyone imagined, reaching into the very marrow of the Church's sacred structure. Yet while men plot in the dark, heaven watches. The celestial courtroom stands open. Angels move swiftly across the heavens, recording, observing, preparing for what comes next. Cardinal Tagle has not slept. His eyes, though weary, burn with the clarity of divine burden. He knows what stands before him is no longer in the hands of mere men. This is not a crisis of politics. It is a cosmic confrontation between righteousness and corruption. Between the bride of Christ and the seductions of Babylon that have crept into her courts. The world media, desperate for sound bites, cannot grasp the full gravity. They speak of scandals, they whisper of power struggles. But what they miss is the deeper war, the war for the very soul of the Church. Pope Leo XIV remains silent for now. Many wonder whether his silence is strategic or sorrowful. Some speculate he too has been handed even darker revelations. Documents delivered to his private chambers under cover of night, accompanied by whispered confessions of those who could no longer carry the guilt of what they had hidden. Even among the cardinals, lines are being drawn. Some secretly support Tagle, recognizing the hand of providence in his boldness. Others plot his downfall, desperate to preserve the illusion of stability, fearing that full exposure would collapse the entire institution. In monasteries across the world, visions and dreams are being reported among the devout. Holy men and women awaken in the middle of the night with divine warnings. Visions of thrones trembling, of a great shaking, of the purification long foretold. The signs multiply: bleeding statues, inexplicable lights in the sky, unexplainable weeping from sacred icons. Nature itself seems to respond to the spiritual rupture unfolding within the heart of the Church. And yet, Cardinal Tagle presses forward. He meets now with a small, trusted circle, men and women of prayer, of discernment, of unshakable loyalty to Christ. They pore over prophecies, cross-referencing ancient texts with the unfolding reality. The words of Fatima, of Akita, of La Salette, all seem to converge upon this very moment. Was this not what the Blessed Mother had warned? That the Church would face its greatest hour of trial from within? Tagle speaks softly to his inner circle. We were chosen for this hour, not because we are worthy, but because the time of hiding has ended. The shepherd calls for his flock to be purified, and we must not resist his hand. But as they speak, across the city, others conspire. Old alliances between certain bishops, financial power brokers, and unseen global actors sense the threat to their empire. They whisper of removing Tagle quietly, of discrediting him, of painting him as unstable, as divisive, as dangerous. Already, subtle media campaigns are being launched. Leaks are orchestrated. False narratives are spun. The machinery of deception revs to full speed. But heaven's timing is unshakable, for as these earthly plots unfold, supernatural signs continue. A sudden lightning strike pierces the Vatican obelisk during an unusually clear sky, witnessed by dozens. Many see it as a sign of judgment, a warning from the Almighty that he himself has now entered the battle. Among the laity, grassroots movements explode overnight. Prayer vigils form outside cathedrals around the world. Pilgrimages surge. The faithful cry out not for explanations, but for deliverance, for the cleansing that only the hand of God can now perform, and in the unseen realm, the principalities of darkness rage. The old demonic thrones, long hidden behind false piety and corrupted hierarchies, sense their exposure drawing near. They lash out, sowing confusion, terror, division, and lies. But their time grows short. Cardinal Tagle receives new information. A sealed dossier delivered by a trembling Vatican archivist, too frightened to speak but desperate to unburden his soul. What lies within that folder threatens to reveal names that were never supposed to be spoken, deeds that were never supposed to be known, oaths that were never supposed to be broken. It is no longer just about scandal. It is about covenants made with darkness itself. Agreements that trace back to forbidden councils, secret societies, and unholy alliances that sought to infiltrate the bride of Christ from within. And Tagle knows the next announcement may cost him everything. As the clock strikes midnight once more, the marble corridors of the Apostolic Palace echo with a chilling stillness. The dossier lies unopened before Cardinal Tagle, its wax seal bearing the ancient insignia of the Vatican's secret archive. A seal untouched for decades, perhaps even centuries. The very air around him thickens, as though invisible forces linger, waiting to witness what is about to be unleashed. The candle flickers violently, casting shadows that dance like specters upon the walls. In the silence, Tagle prays. His whispered petitions rise like incense. "Not my will, Lord, but yours be done." And with trembling hands he breaks the seal. What he finds inside freezes his breath. The names. Oh, the names. Men of power. Men. Still seated on thrones of influence. Men praised in public as holy, but privately bound to oaths of darkness. Financial trails meticulously recorded. Secret conclaves hidden behind the facade of charitable works. And most terrifying of all, a long-forgotten prophecy, buried deep in the archives, attributed to one of the early visionaries of Fatima, sealed away for fear of what it would reveal. The prophecy reads like thunder rolling across the centuries, when the shepherd becomes both judge and witness. And when the blood of the martyrs cries from beneath the altars, the final cleansing shall begin. The one who stands between east and west will hold the scroll. From his mouth will pour both judgment and mercy. But know this, when the twin eclipses cross the sky, the heavens themselves shall descend. Tagle's pulse quickens. His mind races. The eclipses. The twin eclipses, once dismissed as superstition, are now less than a year away, their paths set to cross over the sacred lands of Rome and Jerusalem. In convergence no astronomer can explain. And suddenly, the timing of his appointment makes perfect, terrifying sense. This is not merely a scandal of men, this is the countdown to an event written in the stars. But even as Tagle processes the staggering implications, a knock strikes his door, 3 sharp raps, deliberate, calculated. The door creaks open, and a shadowy figure steps inside, a man cloaked in the simple black cassock of the Vatican's most secretive order. His face, partially illuminated, reveals an expression neither friendly nor hostile, only grave. "It is time, Eminence," the man whispers. "You are being summoned." Summoned? By whom? Tagle asks, though in his spirit he already knows the answer. "The Pope," the man replies softly. but not as you expect. Led through a labyrinth of hidden corridors, far beneath the Vatican gardens, Tagle is brought to a chamber most cardinals have only heard of in whispers. A subterranean vault known only to a handful of pontiffs and their most trusted confidants. Here the true archives rest, the forbidden histories, the suppressed scrolls, the unspoken records of spiritual warfare that have long been kept from public eyes. Waiting inside is Pope Leo XIII, alone, solemn, his face illuminated only by the glow of a single lamp. He speaks first. "You've seen it now, haven't you, Luis?" Tagle nods, his voice nearly lost. "Yes, Holiness, I have seen it." The Pope exhales deeply, as though releasing a burden he has carried for years. "I have waited for this moment, for one who would find it, for one who would not fear it, for one chosen not by men, but by heaven itself." The two men stand in a silence thick with eternal consequence. "The Church," Leo XIV continues, "was infiltrated long ago, but the time for delay is over. You were not promoted by accident. You were brought to Albano for this very task. And now I must reveal to you what even your dossier does not contain." With a motion of his hand, the Pope activates a hidden mechanism. The wall shifts, revealing an inner sanctum. And there, resting upon a pedestal of ancient stone, lies a scroll, far older than any document Tagle has seen. Its edges are worn, yet the golden ink still glistens as though freshly inscribed. "The final scroll of Peter," the Pope declares. Tagle's heart pounds. Legends of such a scroll had circulated for centuries, dismissed as myth even by the most devout historians. "This," Leo XIV whispers, "was given to the first bishop of Rome by the Apostle John before his exile. It contains the instructions for the cleansing of the Church at the end of days. It has remained hidden, guarded, by a silent order for generations, awaiting the hour that now has come." Tears fill Tagle's eyes. The full weight of his calling crashes upon him. He was never simply a cardinal, he was never simply a bishop. He is the vessel chosen for the purification foretold from the beginning. "And now, my son," the Pope continues, his voice trembling, "you must read it. You must lead it. For the bride must be cleansed before the master returns." And as Tagle reaches for the scroll, the ground itself rumbles beneath the Vatican. A tremor, faint but undeniable, moves through the ancient stones, as though heaven has just acknowledged what earth is about to witness. The cleansing has begun, and no one, not kings, not cardinals, not nations, will be able to stop what comes next.